June 15th, 1892. The summer has arrived at Morrow Point with a gentleness I did not expect. After the long months of winter storms and spring fogs, the sea has finally settled into something resembling calm. I sit now on the gallery, my journal balanced on my knee, watching the sun descend toward the horizon in shades of amber and rose. The air is warm, carrying with it the scent of salt and wild heather from the mainland. I have been here for 9 months now, and I find myself changed in ways I am only beginning to understand. I received word last week that my contract has been extended. The Lighthouse board, it seems, is pleased with my work. They have offered me another year at Morrow Point, and I have accepted without hesitation. My sister Margaret will not understand. She writes to me still, her letters filled with concern and gentle pleas for me to return to Edinburgh, to take up a position more befitting a man of my education. But how can I explain to her that I have found something here that I never knew I was searching for? How can I tell her about the covenant, about Leviathan, about the ancient understanding between the keepers and the deep? I cannot. And so I write back with reassurances and half-truths, telling her that I am well, that the work suits me, that I will visit when my duties allow. The truth is, I am not certain I will ever leave this place. June 18th, 1892. A new development has occurred, one that I must record carefully. Yesterday morning, as I was performing my routine inspection of the lens mechanism, I discovered something peculiar. Tucked behind one of the brass fittings, hidden from casual observation, was a small leather pouch. Inside, I found 3 items: a tarnished silver ring, a folded piece of paper covered in symbols I do not recognize, and a single black feather, perfectly preserved, despite what must be years of concealment. I have spent the better part of 2 days studying these objects. The ring is plain, bearing no inscription, though it is sized for a woman's finger. The feather appears to be from a cormorant, common enough in these waters, yet there is something about its placement that suggests significance. But it is the paper that truly captures my attention. The symbols upon it are unlike anything I have encountered in my studies. They are not letters in any alphabet I know, nor do they resemble the mathematical notations I learned at university. They are something else entirely, curved and flowing, like waves frozen in ink, or perhaps like the patterns I have seen on Leviathan's skin when the moonlight catches it just so. I wonder if Thomas Brennan left these items, or perhaps they belonged to a keeper before him, passed down through generations of watchers at this lonely post. I have added them to my collection of mysteries, alongside the unsent letters and the scratched words on the lens mechanism. Morrow Point, it seems, has more secrets than I initially imagined. June 22nd, 1892. The longest day of the year has passed, and with it came a phenomenon I had read about but never witnessed. The sun barely set at all, merely dipping below the horizon for a few brief hours, before rising again in a blaze of gold. I stayed awake through the entire night, if it could be called night, watching the sky shift through impossible colors, lavender and peach and the palest green like the aurora but softer, more diffuse. The sea reflected these colors back, creating the illusion that I was suspended between 2 skies, floating in an infinite space of light. Leviathan came to the surface during those luminous hours. I saw the great creature rise slowly from the depths, its massive form breaking the water with barely a ripple. In that strange half-light, I could see details I had never noticed before, the intricate patterns along its flanks, the way its skin seemed to shift and change color with each movement, the ancient intelligence in its eyes as it regarded me from across the water. We stayed like that for what felt like hours, the creature and I, sharing the midsummer light in companionable silence. I find myself thinking about time differently now. Before I came to Morrow Point, I measured my days in hours and minutes, always rushing from one task to the next, always aware of deadlines and obligations. But here, time moves differently. It flows like the tide, ebbing and flooding in its own rhythm, paying no heed to the arbitrary divisions we impose upon it. I have learned to move with this rhythm rather than against it, to let the days unfold as they will, to find peace in the endless repetition of my duties. June 28, 1892. Captain Gregor arrived today with the monthly supplies. He brought news from the mainland, political troubles in London, a new railway being built somewhere in the Highlands, the death of a minor aristocrat whose name I did not recognize. I listened politely, nodding in the appropriate places, but I found myself strangely unmoved by these reports from the outside world. They seemed distant, almost fictional, like stories from a book I had read long ago and only dimly remembered. The captain noticed my detachment. "You've changed, Mr. Ashworth," he said, studying me with those weathered eyes that have seen so much of the sea. "When I first brought you here, you were all nerves and questions. Now look at you, calm as the water, on a windless day." I did not know how to respond to this observation, so I simply smiled and helped him unload the crates. But his words stayed with me long after his boat had disappeared over the horizon. Have I changed so much? I suppose I have. The man who arrived at Morrow Point 9 months ago was searching for something, though he did not know what. He was running from the noise and confusion of the city, from the expectations of his family, from a life that felt increasingly meaningless. He came here seeking solitude, and he found it. But he also found something more, a purpose, a connection, a sense of belonging that he had never experienced before. I am no longer running from anything. I am exactly where I am meant to be. July 3rd, 1892. I have begun to explore the cave more thoroughly, armed with a lantern and a length of rope. I have ventured deeper into its recesses than ever before, mapping the passages and documenting the carvings that cover its walls. What I have found has left me breathless with wonder. The cave extends much further than I initially realized. Beyond the main chamber with its depictions of the lighthouse and the creatures, there are smaller passages that branch off in several directions. Some of these lead to dead ends, their walls blank and unremarkable. But others open into additional chambers, each one decorated with its own unique imagery. In one chamber, I found carvings that appeared to depict the construction of the lighthouse itself. Tiny figures worked together to stack stones, while larger figures, the creatures I believe, watch from the water nearby. The level of detail is remarkable. I can make out individual tools in the workers' hands, the expressions on their faces, even the patterns of the waves beneath the watching creatures. This carving suggests something extraordinary, that the creatures were present when the lighthouse was built, that they witnessed its construction, perhaps even approved of it. In another chamber, deeper still, I discovered something that made my heart race. The carvings here are different from the others, more abstract, more complex. They show spiraling patterns that seem to move even as I look at them, creating the illusion of depth and motion. At the center of these spirals, there is a shape that I can only describe as a door. It is rectangular, clearly artificial, surrounded by symbols similar to those on the paper I found in the lens room. I do not know what this door represents, but I intend to find out. July 8, 1892. I dreamed of the door last night. In my dream, I stood before it in the deepest chamber of the cave, my lantern casting flickering shadows across its surface. The symbols around it began to glow with a soft blue light, pulsing in a rhythm that matched my heartbeat. I reached out to touch the door, and as my fingers made contact with the cold stone, it began to open. I woke before I could see what lay beyond. The dream has stayed with me throughout the day, vivid and persistent in a way that ordinary dreams are not. I find myself returning to it again and again, trying to remember details that slip away like water through my fingers. What was behind the door? Why did I feel no fear, only anticipation? And why do I have the strangest sense that the dream was not entirely a dream, that somewhere, In some way I do not understand, I actually stood before that door and began to open it. I have decided to return to the cave tomorrow. I need to see the door again, to study it more carefully, to determine whether there is any physical mechanism that might allow it to open. I know this sounds mad. Perhaps it is mad. But I have learned to trust my instincts at Morrow Point, and my instincts are telling me that the door is important, that it is connected to the covenant, to the creatures, to the very purpose of this lighthouse. July 10th, 1892. I have made a discovery that changes everything. Yesterday I returned to the cave as planned. I made my way through the winding passages to the deepest chamber, where the carved door waits in eternal patience. I spent hours examining it, running my fingers over the symbols, holding my lantern at different angles to catch every detail. And then, quite by accident, I found it. One of the symbols, a spiral within a spiral, located at the exact center of the door, is not merely carved into the stone. It is a separate piece, fitted so precisely into the surrounding rock that the seam is nearly invisible. When I pressed it, I felt it give slightly beneath my fingers. When I pressed harder, I heard a sound from deep within the stone, a grinding, shifting sound like ancient mechanisms coming to life after centuries of stillness. The door did not open, but something changed. The air in the chamber grew colder, and I became aware of a presence, not threatening, but vast and ancient and utterly alien. It was as if the cave itself had awakened, as if the stone walls were watching me with patient, knowing eyes. I stood frozen, my heart pounding, waiting for something to happen. And then I heard it. A voice, or something like a voice, speaking directly into my mind. It did not use words, not exactly. It communicated in images and feelings, in concepts that transcended language. And what it told me was this: I am not ready. The door will open when I am ready, and not before. There are things I must learn first, things I must understand. The covenant is older than I know, deeper than I imagine. I am part of it now, but I am only beginning to grasp what that means. I left the cave in a daze, my mind reeling with questions. What must I learn? How will I know when I am ready? And what waits behind the door that requires such preparation? I do not have answers, but I am no longer afraid of the questions. July 15th, 1892. The summer days continue, long and golden and peaceful. I have settled into a new routine, one that incorporates my explorations of the cave alongside my regular duties. Each morning I tend to the light, cleaning the lens, checking the mechanism, ensuring that everything is in perfect working order. Each afternoon I descend to the cave, spending hours in study and contemplation. And each evening I sit on the gallery and watch for Leviathan, sharing the sunset with my ancient companion. I have begun to notice patterns in the creature's appearances. It comes most often during the liminal hours, dawn and dusk, when the boundary between day and night grows thin. It seems drawn to these transitional moments, these spaces between one state and another. I wonder if this preference is connected to the door in the cave, to the threshold it represents. Perhaps Leviathan understands something about boundaries and crossings that I am only beginning to glimpse. I have also noticed that my dreams have changed since I touched the door. They are more vivid now, more coherent, filled with images that feel less like fantasies and more like memories, though memories of things I have never experienced. I dream of vast underwater cities, their spires reaching toward a surface impossibly far above. I dream of creatures like Leviathan, hundreds of them, moving through the deep in graceful formation. I dream of a time before humans walked the earth, when the sea was the whole world and the land was nothing but a distant promise. These dreams do not frighten me. They feel like lessons, like pieces of a puzzle slowly coming together. I record them in my journal each morning, hoping that eventually they will form a coherent picture. July 20th, 1892. A storm came today, sudden and fierce, sweeping in from the northwest with barely any warning. I had just enough time to secure the gallery doors before the wind hit, howling around the tower with a fury I had not heard since winter. The rain came down in sheets, so thick that I could not see the water below, only an endless gray curtain that seemed to swallow the world. I climbed to the lantern room and lit the lamp early, watching the beam cut through the storm like a blade of gold. There is something magnificent about the light in moments like these, something that fills me with pride and purpose. This is why I am here. This is what I do. While the storm rages and the sea churns and ships struggle to find their way, I keep the light burning. I am a fixed point in a world of chaos, a beacon of hope in the darkness. The storm lasted through the night and into the following morning. When it finally passed, I emerged onto the gallery to survey the damage. The rocks below were strewn with debris, driftwood and seaweed, and the broken remains of what might have been a small fishing boat. I climbed down to investigate, picking through the wreckage with careful hands. I found no bodies, thank God, but I did find something else. A wooden box, sealed with wax, containing a collection of letters tied with string. The letters are water-damaged, but still legible, written in a feminine hand. They are addressed to someone named My Dearest William, and signed Your Loving Catherine. I have not read them yet. They feel too private, too intimate, like secrets that were never meant for my eyes. But I have brought them back to the lighthouse, adding them to my growing collection of mysteries washed up by the sea. July 25th, 1892. I read the letters today. I know I should not have, but curiosity overcame my scruples. They tell a story of love and loss, of a woman waiting for a sailor who never returned. Catherine writes of her days spent watching the harbor, of her nights spent dreaming of William's return, of her slowly fading hope as the months turned into years. The final letter, dated 1847, is barely coherent. A rambling, desperate plea for William to come back, to give her some sign that he still lives, that he still loves her. I wept as I read these words. I wept for Catherine and William, for their love that was swallowed by the sea. I wept for all the sailors who have been lost to these waters, for all the families who have waited in vain for their return. And I wept for myself, for the loneliness that I thought I had conquered but which still lurks in the corners of my heart, waiting for moments of weakness to emerge. But even as I wept, I felt something else, a sense of connection, of continuity. Catherine's letters have survived for 45 years, carried by currents and tides to wash up at my feet. Her love, her grief, her hope. They have endured, preserved in ink and paper, waiting to be witnessed. And now I have witnessed them. I have read her words and felt her pain and added her story to my own. In some small way, I have kept her memory alive. This is what we do, we keepers of the light. We preserve, we remember, we hold vigil for those who are lost and those who are waiting. The light is not just a warning to ships. It is a promise to everyone who sees it that someone is watching, someone is caring, someone is keeping faith with the darkness. I have buried Catherine's letters in a small tin box near the base of the lighthouse, alongside the photograph I found in the wreckage months ago. It seems fitting that they should rest here, in the shadow of the light, watched over by the keeper and the creatures in the ancient covenant that binds us all together. August 1st, 1892. A new month begins, and with it comes a subtle shift in the quality of the light. The days are still long, but I can sense the first whispers of autumn in the air, a coolness in the morning breeze, a golden tinge to the afternoon sun that was not there before. The heather on the distant mainland has begun to bloom, painting the hills in shades of purple that I can see on clear days when I climb to the gallery with my telescope. It is beautiful, achingly so, and I find myself grateful once again for the privilege of witnessing such things. I have been thinking about Thomas Brennan lately. His letters, his Bible with its torn pages, the words scratched into the lens mechanism. These fragments of his presence haunt me in ways I did not expect. I know now that he was not mad, as the rumors suggested. He saw what I have seen. He felt what I have felt. He stood at the threshold of understanding, just as I do now. But something went wrong for him. Something broke. I have reread his letters to Eleanor, searching for clues. In his earlier writings, he sounds much like me, awed by the solitude, humbled by the vastness of the sea, gradually awakening to the mysteries of this place. But as the months progress, his tone changes. He becomes obsessed with the door in the cave, convinced that he must open it, that everything depends on his ability to pass through. He writes of sleepless nights spent studying the symbols, of dreams that blur into waking visions, of voices that whisper secrets he cannot quite hear. His final letter, dated just 3 days before he was found wandering the rocks in a state of complete disorientation, contains only a single line. I tried to force it open. God forgive me, I tried to force it. I understand now what happened to Thomas Brennan. He was impatient. He pushed too hard, too fast, demanding answers that were not yet his to receive. The door, or whatever presence guards it, responded by breaking something inside him. Not his body, but his mind. His ability to distinguish between what is real and what is imagined. His capacity to hold the weight of ancient knowledge without being crushed by it. I will not make the same mistake. I will wait. I will learn. I will trust that the door will open when I am ready, and not before. August 5th, 1892. Leviathan brought me a gift today. I was sitting on the rocks near the water's edge, enjoying the afternoon sun, when I saw the great creature surface about 50 yards offshore. This was unusual. Leviathan typically keeps a greater distance during daylight hours, and I watched with curiosity as it swam slowly toward me. When it was perhaps 20 yards away, it stopped and regarded me with those ancient, knowing eyes. Then it opened its massive mouth and released something into the water. The object floated toward me on the gentle current, and I waded out to retrieve it. It was a stone, smooth and oval, about the size of my palm, but it was unlike any stone I have ever seen. Its surface was covered in the same spiraling symbols that decorate the cave walls and the door in the deepest chamber. And when I held it up to the light, I could see that it was not entirely opaque. There was something inside it, something that glowed with a faint blue luminescence. I looked back at Leviathan, and I swear the creature nodded. Then it sank beneath the waves and was gone. I have spent the evening studying the stone. It is warm to the touch, warmer than it should be, and it pulses with a rhythm that matches my heartbeat. When I hold it close to my ear, I can hear something. Not quite a sound, but a vibration, a frequency that resonates somewhere deep in my chest. I do not know what this stone is or what it does, but I know it is important. Leviathan would not have given it to me otherwise. I have placed it on my desk, next to the leather pouch I found in the lens room. The stone's glow illuminates the symbols on the paper, and I notice for the first time that some of them match. Whatever language this is, whatever knowledge it contains, the stone and the paper are connected. They are pieces of the same puzzle. August 10th, 1892. I have made progress with the symbols. For the past 5 days, I have done little else but study them. I have compared the markings on the stone to those on the paper, to those carved in the cave, to those surrounding the door. I have filled page after page of my journal with notes and sketches, trying to find patterns, trying to decode their meaning. And slowly, painstakingly, I have begun to understand. The symbols are not letters in the conventional sense. They do not represent sounds or words. Instead, they represent concepts, ideas that exist beyond language, truths that cannot be spoken but only felt. Each symbol is a compressed packet of meaning, containing layers upon layers of information that unfold in the mind like a flower opening to the sun. The spiral, for instance, does not simply mean spiral. It means growth, change, the endless cycle of becoming. It means the way the universe expands from a single point, the way a shell grows from its center, the way consciousness evolves from simplicity to complexity. It means time itself, not the linear time of clocks and calendars, but the deep time of geology and evolution, the time in which mountains rise and fall and species come and go like waves upon a shore. I am learning to read these symbols not with my eyes, but with my mind. When I focus on one, allowing my thoughts to quiet and my awareness to expand, the meaning flows into me like water filling an empty vessel. It is exhausting work. Each session leaves me drained and disoriented, but it is also exhilarating. I'm learning a language older than humanity, a language spoken by the creatures of the deep, a language that connects me to something vast and ancient and infinitely wise. August 15th, 1892. The dreams have intensified. Every night now I find myself in the underwater cities I first glimpsed weeks ago. But the dreams are no longer passive. I am no longer merely an observer. I move through these alien landscapes as if I belong there, swimming with an ease that my waking body does not possess, breathing water as naturally as I breathe air. I explore towering structures of coral and stone, their surfaces covered in the spiraling symbols I am learning to read. I encounter creatures of every shape and size, some like Leviathan, vast and ancient, others smaller and stranger, forms that have no equivalent in the world above the waves. And I am not alone. There are others with me in these dreams, other humans, or beings that were once human. They wear robes of woven seaweed and crowns of pearl, and they greet me with smiles of recognition, as if they have been waiting for me, as if my arrival was long foretold. They speak to me in the language of symbols, and I understand them perfectly. They tell me stories of the old times, before the land rose from the sea, before the first fish crawled onto the shore, before the long separation between the world above and the world below. They tell me about the covenant. It is older than I imagined, older than the lighthouse, older than humanity, older than the current shape of the continents. It was forged in an age when the boundaries between realms were thinner, when beings could pass freely between water and air, between waking and dreaming, between life and death. The covenant is a promise, a pact, a sacred agreement between those who dwell in the deep and those who keep the light. We watch over each other. We protect each other. We maintain the balance that keeps both worlds alive. The lighthouse is not just a warning to ships. It is a beacon between realms, a fixed point that anchors the covenant in physical space. And the keeper is not just a tender of the flame. The keeper is a guardian, a bridge, a living link between the world above and the world below. I wake from these dreams with tears on my face, overwhelmed by the beauty and the weight of what I am learning. I am part of something so much larger than myself. We all are, every keeper who has ever tended this light, every creature who has ever swum these waters, every soul who has ever looked up at the stars and wondered what lies beyond. August 20th, 1892. Captain Gregor came today with supplies and news. He seemed troubled, though he tried to hide it behind his usual gruff manner. When I pressed him, he admitted that there have been strange occurrences along the coast. Fishermen reporting unusual lights beneath the water. Ships encountering patches of sea that glow with an eerie blue luminescence. Rumors of creatures seen in the depths that match no known species. "The old folks are talking," he said, his voice low. "They say the sea is waking up. They say something is coming." I wanted to tell him the truth. I wanted to explain about the covenant, about Leviathan, about the door in the cave and the stone that pulses with ancient light. But I held my tongue. How could I expect him to understand? How could I put into words experiences that transcend language itself? He would think me mad, just as they thought Thomas Brennan was mad. And perhaps by the standards of the ordinary world, I am. But I know what I know. I have seen what I have seen, and I am beginning to suspect that the something the old folks sense is not a threat, but an awakening, a stirring of ancient powers that have slept for too long, a renewal of connections that were nearly forgotten. The covenant is reasserting itself. The boundaries between realms are growing thin again, And I, Edward Ashworth, keeper of Morrow Point Light, am somehow at the center of it all. August 2005, 1892. I returned to the door today. I had not visited the deepest chamber since my first encounter with the presence that guards it, but I felt drawn there with an urgency I could not ignore. Armed with my lantern and the glowing stone Leviathan gave me, I made my way through the winding passages, my heart pounding with anticipation. The chamber was different. I sensed it the moment I entered, a charge in the air, a vibration in the stone beneath my feet. The carved symbols on the walls seemed brighter, more defined, as if they had been freshly cut. And the door itself, the door was changed. Where before it had been a flat carving, indistinguishable from the surrounding rock, now it stood out in sharp relief. I could see its edges clearly, could trace the outline of its frame with my fingers. It was still closed, still sealed, but it was more present somehow, more real. As if my studies, my dreams, my growing understanding had given it substance. I held up the stone, and its blue glow intensified, casting dancing shadows across the chamber walls. The symbols around the door began to pulse in response, matching the stone's rhythm, matching my heartbeat. I felt the presence again, that vast, ancient awareness, but this time it did not feel distant or forbidding. It felt welcoming. It felt like coming home. I pressed my palm against the door, and I heard words in my mind. Not the wordless communication of before, but actual words, clear and distinct. "You are learning well, Keeper. But there is more to understand. The door opens not to those who seek power, but to those who seek service. Not to those who wish to take, but to those who wish to give." When you understand what it means to be a bridge between worlds, when you accept the weight of that responsibility without fear or pride, then the door will open, and you will see what lies beyond. I stood there for a long time, my hand against the cold stone, letting the words sink into my soul. Service, giving, being a bridge. These are not abstract concepts to me. They are the essence of what I do every day, every night, as I tend the light and watch over the waters. But I sense that the door requires something more, some deeper commitment that I have not yet made. I will meditate on this. I will continue my studies, and I will trust that understanding will come in its own time. August 30th, 1892. The last day of August, and I find myself in a reflective mood. 1 year ago, I was still in Edinburgh, still trapped in a life that felt increasingly meaningless, still searching for something I could not name. I had no idea that within a few short months I would be standing on a rocky outcrop at the edge of the world, learning the language of ancient creatures, preparing to open a door that leads to mysteries beyond imagination. How strange life is, how unpredictable. We make our plans and set our courses, believing we know where we are going, and then the wind changes and we find ourselves in waters we never expected to sail. I came to Morrow Point seeking solitude and escape. I found purpose and connection. I came running from the noise of the world. I found a silence so profound that it speaks louder than any voice I have ever heard. I think about the keepers who came before me. Thomas Brennan with his broken mind, and those before him whose names I do not know. I think about the keepers who will come after me, who will tend this light and learn these secrets and stand where I am standing now. We are links in a chain that stretches back into the mists of time and forward into a future I cannot see. Each of us plays our part, adds our thread to the tapestry, carries the covenant forward for another generation. This thought brings me comfort. Whatever happens, whether I open the door or not, whether I understand the full truth or only glimpse its edges, I am part of something that will continue. The light will keep burning. The creatures will keep watching. The covenant will endure, and that is enough. That is more than enough. September 3rd, 1892. Autumn has arrived in earnest. The days are noticeably shorter now, the nights longer and cooler. The sea has taken on a steely gray color that speaks of coming storms, and the wind carries a bite that was absent just weeks ago. I have begun preparing for winter, checking my supplies, reinforcing the shutters, ensuring that the heating stove is in good working order. The lessons of last winter have not been forgotten, but even as I attend to these practical matters, my mind is elsewhere. The dreams continue, growing more vivid and more instructive with each passing night. I am learning things that no book could teach me, things that no university could offer. I am learning the history of the world as the creatures know it, a history that stretches back millions of years, that encompasses ice ages and extinctions, the rise and fall of species beyond counting. I am learning about the delicate balance that sustains all life, the web of connections that links every creature to every other, the profound interdependence that we surface dwellers have largely forgotten. And I am learning about myself. In the dreams, I see my own life from a perspective I never had before, not as a series of random events, but as a pattern, a path that was leading me here all along. Every choice I made, every road I took or did not take, every moment of joy and sorrow and confusion, all of it was preparation. All of it was necessary. I am exactly who I need to be, exactly where I need to be, doing exactly what I was born to do. This knowledge does not make me proud, it makes me humble. I am not special. I am simply the one who is here now at this particular moment in the long history of the Covenant. Others came before me, others will come after. My role is to play my part as well as I can, to learn what I can learn, to serve as faithfully as I am able. Nothing more, nothing less. September 8th, 1892. Something remarkable happened today. I was in the cave studying the symbols in one of the smaller chambers when I heard a sound behind me. I turned, expecting to see nothing. Sounds in caves are often tricks of acoustics, echoes of water or wind. But instead I saw a figure standing in the passage. It was a woman. She was dressed in clothes that seemed to belong to no particular era. Flowing garments of deep blue and green that moved as if stirred by an underwater current. Her hair was long and dark, streaked with silver, and her eyes were the color of the sea on a stormy day, gray and green and blue all at once, with depths that seemed to go on forever. I should have been frightened. A stranger appearing in a cave beneath a remote lighthouse is not a normal occurrence. But I felt no fear, only a profound sense of recognition, as if I had known this woman all my life, as if I had been waiting for her without knowing it. "Edward Ashworth," she said, and her voice was like waves breaking on a distant shore. "Keeper of the light, student of the symbols, friend of Leviathan." "Who are you?" I managed to ask. She smiled, and in that smile I saw ages upon ages, wisdom accumulated over millennia, patience that could outlast mountains. "I am called many things," she said, "the Sea Mother, the Deep Watcher, the First Keeper. But names are just sounds we make to comfort ourselves. What matters is not what I am called, but what I am. And what I am is the same as what you are becoming." She stepped closer, and I saw that her feet did not quite touch the ground. She was not entirely solid, not entirely present in the way that physical beings are present. She was something between, a bridge, I realized, just as I am learning to be a bridge. "You have questions," she said. "Ask them." September 8th, 1892 continued. I do not know how long we talked. Time seemed to lose all meaning in that chamber, flowing around us like water around a stone. I asked her about the Covenant, and she told me its origins, how in the earliest days of the world, when the boundaries between realms were fluid and permeable, beings of the deep and beings of the surface recognized their kinship and pledged to watch over each other. I asked her about the door, and she explained that it is not a door in the physical sense, but a threshold of consciousness, a point of transition between one way of being and another. When you pass through, she said, you will not go anywhere. You will simply become more fully what you already are. The separation you feel between yourself and the world, between your mind and other minds, between the present moment and all of time, that separation will dissolve. You will see that it was always an illusion, a necessary illusion that allowed you to function as an individual, but an illusion nonetheless. And then what? I asked. What happens after I pass through? She looked at me with those fathomless eyes, and I saw compassion there, and something that might have been sorrow. Then you will have a choice, she said. You can return to the world as you knew it, carrying your new understanding but living as you lived before. Or you can stay in the expanded state, becoming a permanent bridge between realms, serving the covenant in ways that few have ever served. The first path is easier. The second is transformative. What did Thomas Brennan choose? I asked. Her expression shifted, became sad. Thomas Brennan did not pass through the door. He tried to force it open before he was ready, and the attempt shattered something inside him. He glimpsed what lay beyond, but he could not integrate what he saw. His mind could not hold the vastness. How do I know if I'm ready? She reached out and touched my chest, just over my heart. Her hand was cool like seawater, and I felt a pulse of energy flow from her fingers into my body. You will know, she said. When the time comes, you will know. And then she was gone, fading like mist in the morning sun, leaving me alone in the chamber with the echoes of her words and the lingering coolness of her touch. September 12th, 1892. The encounter with the Sea Mother, for that is how I have come to think of her, has changed something fundamental in my perception. The world looks different now, sounds different, feels different. Colors are more vivid, edges more defined, yet at the same time everything seems connected, woven together by invisible threads that I can almost see if I look from the corner of my eye. The boundary between myself and my surroundings has grown thin, permeable. Sometimes I am not certain where I end and the lighthouse begins, where my thoughts stop and the whisper of the waves starts. This should be disorienting. Perhaps it should be frightening. But instead, I find it peaceful. I am learning to exist in a state of expanded awareness, to hold multiple perspectives simultaneously, to be both the observer and the observed. It is like learning to see with new eyes, to hear with new ears. The world I thought I knew was only a fraction of what is actually here. I have continued my studies of the symbols, but they come easier now. Where before I had to struggle to extract meaning, now the understanding flows naturally, almost effortlessly. I read the cave walls like a scholar reads a familiar text, finding new depths with each encounter but no longer stumbling over the basics. The language of the deep is becoming my language. The thoughts of the ancient ones are becoming my thoughts, and yet I remain myself. Edward Ashworth, keeper of Morrow Point Light. I still perform my duties with care and precision. I still wind the clockwork mechanism and polish the lens and trim the wicks. I still watch the horizon for ships in distress and record the weather in my logbook. The extraordinary has not replaced the ordinary. It has infused it, elevated it, revealed the sacred dimension that was always present but hidden from my untrained eyes. September 16th, 1892. Leviathan came to me again last night, rising from the depths in the silver light of a waning moon. But this time was different. This time the great creature did not merely surface and watch. This time it spoke, not in words, not exactly. The communication was deeper than language, more direct. Images and feelings flowed from Leviathan's mind into mine, carrying meaning that words could never capture. I saw the ocean as Leviathan sees it, not as a flat surface with hidden depths, but as a three-dimensional world of currents and temperatures, of pressure gradients and magnetic fields, of life teeming in every cubic meter from the sunlit shallows to the crushing darkness of the abyss. I saw the history of this place through Leviathan's eyes. I saw the rocks of Morrow Point when they were young, thrust up from the seabed by volcanic forces millions of years ago. I saw the first primitive creatures that colonized these waters, the long, slow dance of evolution that produced the ancestors of the beings I now call friends. I saw the coming of humans, small, fragile, short-lived creatures who nonetheless carried a spark of something remarkable, a capacity for wonder and creativity that the deep ones recognized and cherished. I saw the building of the first beacon on this spot thousands of years before the current lighthouse was constructed. It was a simple thing, a pile of stones, a fire kept burning through the night, but it served the same purpose. It marked the boundary between realms. It said to the creatures of the deep, "Here is a place where we meet, where we remember our kinship, where the covenant is renewed." And I saw myself, tiny and brief against the vast sweep of time, yet somehow significant. A link in the chain, a keeper of the flame, one of countless souls who have stood at this threshold and chosen to serve. When the vision faded, I found myself weeping, not from sorrow, but from the sheer overwhelming beauty of what I had witnessed. I am so small, and the universe is so vast, and yet I matter. We all matter. Every creature, every consciousness, every flickering moment of awareness. All of it is precious, all of it is necessary, all of it is part of the great pattern that the deep ones have been weaving since the beginning of time. September 20th, 1892, I have begun to notice changes in myself that go beyond perception and understanding. My body is changing too, in subtle ways that I cannot quite explain. I need less sleep than I once did. 4 or 5 hours now suffice where I once required 7 or 8. And the sleep I do get is different, deeper, more restorative, filled with dreams that feel more like journeys than fantasies. I wake refreshed and alert, ready to face whatever the day may bring. My senses have sharpened. I can hear the approach of a ship long before it appears on the horizon, can smell changes in the weather hours before they arrive, can see details at distances that would have been impossible for me a year ago. The other night, I counted the individual feathers on a cormorant perched on a rock 100 yards away. I could see each one distinctly, could trace the patterns of light and shadow on its dark plumage. And there is something else, something I hesitate to write, even in the privacy of my own journal. I am beginning to sense the presence of other minds. Not clearly, not in detail, just vague impressions, emotional tones, the general shape of thoughts without their specific content. When Captain Gregor visited last week, I knew he was worried about his daughter's health before he said a word. I could feel his concern like a weight in my own chest, could sense the love and fear tangled together in his heart. I do not know what to make of these changes. Are they a natural consequence of my studies, my communion with the deep ones, my growing understanding of the covenant? Or are they something else, a transformation that is preparing me for what lies beyond the door? I cannot say. I can only observe, record, and trust that understanding will come in its own time. September 25th, 1892. The autumn storms have begun in earnest. For the past 3 days, the wind has howled around the tower without ceasing, driving rain against the windows with such force that I can barely see the rocks below. The sea is a churning chaos of gray and white, waves crashing against the lighthouse's foundation with impacts I can feel in my bones. It is magnificent and terrifying, a reminder of nature's raw power and humanity's fragile place within it. I have kept the light burning through it all, of course. That is my duty, my purpose, my sacred trust. But I have also spent long hours simply watching the storm, marveling at its fury, feeling a strange kinship with the forces at play. I am no longer separate from this wildness. I am part of it. The wind that batters the tower flows through me as well. The waves that crash against the rocks echo in my blood. I am the storm, and the storm is me, and we are both expressions of something larger than either of us. During a brief lull in the tempest, I ventured down to the rocks to check for damage. The lower door had held, though the hinges were strained and would need reinforcement. The supply crane was intact. But as I made my way back to the tower, I saw something that stopped me in my tracks. There, in a sheltered hollow between two large boulders, lay a seal. This was not unusual. Seals often haul out on these rocks to rest. But this seal was different. Its eyes, when they met mine, held an intelligence that no ordinary animal possesses. And its markings were not the random spots and patches of a common seal. They were symbols, the same spiraling, flowing symbols that cover the cave walls and the door in the deepest chamber. The seal regarded me for a long moment, then slipped back into the churning water and was gone. But I understood the message. The deep ones are watching. The covenant holds. Even in the midst of chaos, I am not alone. September 30th, 1892. The storm has passed, leaving behind a world washed clean and sparkling. The air is crisp and clear, carrying the scent of salt and seaweed and the first hints of autumn decay. I spent the morning making repairs, tightening the hinges on the lower door, clearing debris from the gallery, checking every inch of the tower for damage. The lighthouse has weathered worse, I am sure, but I take nothing for granted. This structure is my responsibility, my charge, my home. In the afternoon, I descended to the cave for the first time since the storm began. I was curious to see if the tempest had affected the underground chambers, if water had penetrated the passages or shifted the stones. What I found surprised me. The cave was unchanged, dry and still, as if the fury above had never touched it. But there was something new in the deepest chamber, something that had not been there before. Arranged in a circle around the door were 7 stones, each one similar to the stone Leviathan gave me, smooth, oval, covered in symbols, glowing with that faint blue luminescence. They pulsed in unison, their rhythm matching my heartbeat, creating a pattern of light that danced across the chamber walls. I stood at the edge of the circle, not daring to step inside. The air within it felt different, charged, expectant, alive with potential. The door itself seemed more present than ever, its outline sharp and clear, its surface almost vibrating with contained energy. I could feel the presence behind it, vast and patient, waiting. "Not yet," I whispered, though I did not know if I was speaking to the presence or to myself. "I am not ready yet." The pulsing of the stones seemed to slow, to soften, as if in acknowledgement. The charge in the air dissipated slightly. The door remained closed. I left the chamber with a sense of profound anticipation. Something is building. Something is approaching. The door will open soon. I can feel it in my bones, in my blood, in every fiber of my being. And when it does, everything will change. October 5th, 1892. I have passed the 1-year anniversary of my arrival at Morrow Point. It seems impossible that so much time has passed, and equally impossible that it has been only a year. I am not the same man who stepped off Captain Gregor's boat 12 months ago, pale and nervous and full of unexamined assumptions about the world. That man feels like a stranger to me now, a character in a story I once read, sympathetic but distant. To mark the occasion, I climbed to the gallery at sunset and watched the light come on for the first time as a second-year keeper. The beam swept out across the darkening water, gold against the gathering blue, and I felt a surge of pride and gratitude that brought tears to my eyes. I have kept this light burning for a full year. I have maintained the covenant. I have served. Leviathan surfaced as if to join the celebration, its great form rising from the depths just as the last sliver of sun disappeared below the horizon. We watched each other across the water, the creature and I felt a communication pass between us that needed no symbols, no images, no words. It was simply recognition, acknowledgement, kinship. I raised my hand in greeting, and I swear Leviathan dipped its massive head in response. Then it sank beneath the waves, leaving only ripples that caught the lighthouse beam and scattered it into 1,000 points of dancing light. I stayed on the gallery until the stars came out, thinking about the year behind me and the year ahead. I do not know what the future holds. I do not know when the door will open or what I will find beyond it, but I know that I am where I belong, doing what I was meant to do, and for now, that is enough. October 10th, 1892. A letter arrived today from my sister Margaret. She writes that our mother's health is failing, that the doctors hold little hope, that I should come home if I wish to see her before the end. The words hit me like a physical blow, driving the breath from my lungs and the strength from my legs. I sat down heavily on my bed, the letter trembling in my hands, and for a long moment I could not think at all. My mother. I have not seen her in over a year, have barely thought of her in months. The life I left behind in Edinburgh, the family, the friends, the obligations, has faded to a distant memory, overshadowed by the wonders and mysteries of Morrow Point. I have been so absorbed in my transformation, so focused on the covenant and the door and the deep ones, that I have neglected the human connections that once defined my existence. Guilt washes over me, bitter and cold. What kind of son forgets his mother? What kind of man becomes so lost in otherworldly pursuits that he loses sight of the people who love him? I have been selfish, I realize. I have been so intoxicated by the extraordinary that I have failed in the ordinary duties of love and family. I must go to her. I must leave Morrow Point, at least for a time, and return to Edinburgh to be with my mother in her final days. The thought fills me with a strange mixture of dread and relief. Dread at leaving this place that has become my true home. Relief at the opportunity to reconnect with the world I left behind. But who will tend the light? Who will maintain the covenant in my absence? I cannot simply abandon my post. The Lighthouse board will need to send a replacement, and that will take time my mother may not have. I will write to Captain Gregor tonight asking him to carry an urgent message to the mainland. I will request emergency leave and a temporary keeper. And I will pray that the arrangements can be made quickly enough for me to reach my mother's bedside before it is too late. October 12th, 1892. Captain Gregor came today, earlier than expected. He had already heard about my mother. News travels fast along the coast, passed from ship to ship, from port to port. He brought not only supplies, but also a young man named James Holloway, sent by the Lighthouse board to serve as temporary keeper in my absence. James is perhaps 25, with the eager, earnest look of someone who has not yet been worn down by life's disappointments. He reminds me of myself a year ago, nervous, curious, full of questions about the lighthouse and its workings. I spent the afternoon showing him the routines, explaining the mechanisms, pointing out the quirks and peculiarities of Morrow Point that no manual could capture. I did not tell him about the covenant. I did not mention the cave or the door or the creatures. How could I? He would think me mad, and perhaps he would be right to think so. These are not things that can be explained in an afternoon, not truths that can be transmitted through words alone. If James is meant to learn them, he will learn them in his own time, in his own way. The deep ones will reveal themselves if and when they choose. But I did tell him one thing, as I was preparing to board Captain Gregor's boat. "Keep the light burning," I said, gripping his shoulder and looking into his eyes. "No matter what happens, no matter what you see or hear or feel, keep the light burning. That is the most important thing. That is the only thing that truly matters." He nodded, looking slightly confused by my intensity. "Of course, Mr. Ashworth. That's what we're here for, isn't it?" "Yes," I said. "That's exactly what we're here for." And then I stepped onto the boat, and Captain Gregor cast off, and Morrow Point began to recede into the distance. I watched until the lighthouse was just a speck on the horizon, its beam sweeping across the darkening sky, and I felt something tear inside me, a connection stretched to its limit, a bond that distance could strain but never break. I will return. Whatever happens in Edinburgh, whatever I find when I reach my mother's bedside, I will return to Morrow Point. The covenant demands it. The door awaits, and I am not finished with my transformation. October 15th, 1892, Edinburgh, the city of my birth, the place where I spent the first 30 years of my life. I walk its streets now like a stranger, marveling at how foreign everything feels. The noise, the crowds, the endless bustle of commerce and conversation. It overwhelms my sharpened senses, batters my expanded awareness with a cacophony of impressions I can barely process. I arrived yesterday evening and went directly to my mother's house. Margaret met me at the door, her face pale and drawn, her eyes red from weeping. She embraced me without a word, and I felt her grief and exhaustion flow into me like water into a vessel. She has been carrying this burden alone for weeks, watching our mother fade, managing the household, dealing with doctors and relatives and all the practical matters that death's approach demands. She's been asking for you, Margaret said as she led me upstairs. Every day, she asks if you've come. I didn't know if you would make it in time. My mother lay in her bed, propped up on pillows, her once robust frame shrunken and frail. Her eyes, when they opened and found mine, still held the spark of intelligence and love that I remembered from childhood. But it was dimmed now, flickering like a candle in a draught. "Edward," she whispered, and her voice was the rustle of dry leaves. "My wandering boy, you came." I knelt beside her bed and took her hand, so thin, so fragile, the bones visible beneath papery skin. "I came, Mother. I'm here." She smiled, and for a moment she looked almost young again, almost like the woman who had raised me and loved me and believed in me even when I gave her little reason to. "Tell me about your lighthouse," she said. "Tell me about the sea." And so I did. I sat beside her bed and told her about Morrow Point, about the storms and the sunsets, about the seals on the rocks and the ships passing in the night. I did not tell her about the covenant or the creatures or the door. Those secrets were not mine to share, and she would not have understood them anyway. But I told her about the peace I had found, the purpose, the sense of belonging that had eluded me for so long. She listened with her eyes closed, a faint smile on her lips, and when I finished, she squeezed my hand with surprising strength. "I always knew," she said, "I always knew you were meant for something different, something special. I'm glad you found it, Edward. I'm glad you found your place." Those were the last coherent words she spoke to me. By evening, she had slipped into a sleep from which she would not wake. She died 3 days later, with Margaret and me at her bedside, her hand in mine, her breath fading like the last light of day. October 20th, 1892. The funeral was yesterday, a gray, drizzly day, appropriate for mourning. The church was full of people I barely recognized, distant relatives, old family friends, neighbors who remembered my mother from decades past. They offered condolences and shared memories, and I nodded and thanked them and felt almost nothing. This troubles me. Should I not be devastated by my mother's death? Should I not be drowning in grief, unable to function, consumed by loss? Instead, I feel a strange calm, a sense of acceptance that seems almost inhuman. She lived a good life. She died peacefully, surrounded by love. She has moved on to whatever comes next, and I remain with work still to do. Margaret noticed my composure and mistook it for coldness. "Don't you feel anything?" she demanded after the last mourners had departed. "She was our mother, Edward. She raised us, loved us, sacrificed for us. And you stand there like a statue, like none of it matters." I wanted to explain. I wanted to tell her that I feel everything, not just my own grief, but hers as well, and the grief of everyone who attended the funeral, a vast ocean of sorrow that threatens to overwhelm me if I let down my guard for even a moment. I wanted to tell her that my calm is not coldness but necessity, a dam holding back a flood that would sweep me away if I allowed it to break. but I could not find the words. The language I have learned at Morrow Point does not translate into the speech of ordinary life. The understanding I have gained cannot be shared with those who have not walked the same path. I loved her, I said simply. I love her still. But death is not an ending, Margaret. It is a transition. She has passed through a door, just as we all will someday, and on the other side, I stopped, seeing the confusion and hurt in my sister's eyes. She did not understand. She could not understand. And my attempts to explain were only making things worse. I'm sorry, I said. I grieve in my own way. Please don't doubt my love for her, or for you. Margaret softened slightly, though I could see that my words had not fully reassured her. We embraced, and I felt her tears against my shoulder, and I held her until the storm of her grief had passed. Tomorrow I will begin making arrangements to return to Morrow Point. My mother is gone, but the light still needs tending. The covenant still needs keeping, and the door still waits. October 25th, 1892. I am on a train heading north, watching the Scottish countryside roll past my window. The cities have given way to farmland, the farmland to moors, the moors to the wild, rugged landscape of the Highlands. With each mile that passes, I feel the weight of Edinburgh lifting from my shoulders, the noise and confusion of the city fading like a bad dream. The past week has been difficult. There were legal matters to attend to, my mother's will, the disposition of her property, the settling of her affairs. Margaret and I worked through it together, our relationship strained but not broken. She does not understand my eagerness to return to the lighthouse, my inability to stay and help her through the mourning period. But she has accepted it grudgingly, with the resignation of someone who has long since given up trying to comprehend her strange brother. "Write to me," she said as we parted at the station. "Let me know you're safe. Let me know you're, well, I promised I would, and I meant it. Whatever distances separate us, whatever gulfs of understanding lie between my world and hers, Margaret is still my sister. She is still family. I will not lose that connection entirely, even as I embrace the larger family that awaits me at Morrow Point. The train rocks gently as it climbs into the hills, and I find my eyes growing heavy. I have not slept well since leaving the lighthouse. The dreams that sustain me there do not come in ordinary beds, in ordinary rooms. But now, as I draw closer to my true home, I feel the familiar pull of that other realm, the underwater world that has become as real to me as the waking one. I close my eyes and let myself drift, and soon I am swimming through the deep, surrounded by creatures of light and shadow, heading toward a door that grows clearer with each passing moment. October 28th, 1892. Home. I am home. Captain Gregor met me at the port and ferried me across the choppy autumn waters to Morrow Point. The crossing took longer than usual. The seas were rough, the wind contrary. But I did not mind. I stood at the bow of the boat, letting the salt spray wash over me, feeling the lighthouse draw me back like a magnet drawing iron. James Holloway was waiting on the rocks when we arrived, looking relieved and slightly overwhelmed. "Mr. Ashworth," he said, helping me onto the landing, "I'm glad you're back. It's been a strange few weeks." I studied his face, seeing the shadows under his eyes, the tension in his jaw. "Strange how?" I asked. He hesitated, glancing at Captain Gregor, then back at me. "I'd rather not say in front of... you'll think I'm mad. Everyone will think I'm mad." I put my hand on his shoulder, just as I had done when I left. "Tell me inside," I said, "over a cup of tea. I promise I won't think you're mad." And so, an hour later, sitting in the keeper's quarters with steaming cups between us, James Holloway told me what he had experienced during my absence. The sounds at night, knocking, scraping, something that might have been singing in a language he didn't recognize. The lights in the water, blue and green and gold, moving in patterns that seemed almost purposeful. The dreams, Vivid, overwhelming dreams of underwater cities and ancient creatures, and a door that called to him, beckoned him, promised him wonders beyond imagination. "I thought I was losing my mind," he said, his hands trembling around his cup. "I thought the isolation was getting to me, just like they say it gets to keepers who stay too long. But it felt so real, Mr. Ashworth. It felt more real than anything I've ever experienced." I listened without interrupting, and when he finished, I smiled. "You're not mad, James," I said. "You're not losing your mind. What you experienced is real as this table, as real as the light upstairs, as real as the sea outside. Morrow Point is a special place. It sits on a boundary between worlds, and those who tend the light sometimes catch glimpses of what lies beyond." His eyes widened. "You've seen it too? The creatures, the door?" "I've seen it," I confirmed. "I've done more than see it. I've begun to understand it. And if you're willing, if you're open, I can help you understand it too." James Holloway stared at me for a long moment, and I watched the war play out across his face. The rational mind insisting that such things were impossible, the deeper knowing insisting that they were not. Finally, he nodded. "Tell me everything," he said, and so I did. November 1st, 1892, the first day of November, and winter announces its approach with a bitter wind from the north. James left yesterday, carried back to the mainland by Captain Gregor, his mind full of wonders and his heart full of questions. I do not know if he will return to lighthousekeeping, or if his brief time at Morrow Point will remain an anomaly in an otherwise ordinary life. But I know that he has been changed, just as I was changed. The seeds have been planted. What grows from them is not for me to determine. I am alone again, and the solitude feels like a homecoming. The lighthouse welcomes me back with its familiar creaks and groans, its rhythms of light and darkness, its endless conversation with the sea. I have resumed my duties with a sense of renewed purpose, tending the flame with care and devotion, maintaining the mechanisms with precise attention. But I have also resumed my other work, the deeper work, the secret work. The cave calls to me with an urgency I have not felt before. The door is closer now, more present, more real. I can feel it even when I am not in the chamber, a constant pressure at the edge of my awareness, a whisper that never quite resolves into words. Something has shifted during my absence. The 7 stones that appeared after the storm are glowing more brightly now, their pulses faster, more insistent. The symbols on the walls seem to move when I look at them, rearranging themselves into new configurations, spelling out messages I am only beginning to decipher. And the presence behind the door, the presence is awake, alert, waiting. I am almost ready. I can feel it in my bones, in my blood, in the very structure of my thoughts. The transformation that began when I first arrived at Morrow Point is nearing its completion. Soon, very soon, I will stand before the door and it will open, and I will see what lies beyond. But not yet. There is still something I must understand, some final piece of the puzzle that eludes me. I do not know what it is, but I trust that it will reveal itself when the time is right. November 5th, 1892. I have been studying the letters I found in the wreckage, Catherine's letters to her lost William. I read them again and again, tracing the arc of her love and grief, feeling the weight of her waiting. And I have begun to understand something that I missed before. Catherine never stopped believing. Even in her final letter, even in the depths of her despair, she held on to hope. She believed that William would return, that their love would triumph over distance and time, and even death. Her faith was irrational, perhaps even delusional by the standards of the ordinary world. But it was also beautiful and powerful and true in a way that transcends mere facts. This is what I have been missing. This is the final piece. The door does not open to knowledge alone. It does not open to understanding or wisdom or even service. It opens to faith, to the willingness to believe in something larger than oneself, to trust in a reality that cannot be proven, to leap into the unknown with nothing but hope to sustain you. Thomas Brennan tried to force the door because he lacked faith. He had knowledge, perhaps more knowledge than I have now, but he did not trust. He demanded certainty, proof, guarantees. And when the door refused to yield to his demands, he tried to break it down, and it broke him instead. I will not make that mistake. I will approach the door not as a conqueror, but as a supplicant. Not as one who demands answers, but as one who offers trust. I will believe, even when belief seems foolish. I will hope, even when hope seems vain. I will love, even when love seems impossible. This is the way. This has always been the way. November 10th, 1892. Leviathan came to me last night with a message. I was standing on the gallery watching the stars wheel overhead when I felt the familiar presence rise from the depths. The great creature surfaced closer than ever before, so close that I could have reached out and touched its massive head. Its eyes, ancient and wise, held mine with an intensity that made my breath catch in my throat. And then the images came, flooding into my mind with a force that nearly knocked me off my feet. I saw the door opening. I saw light pouring through. Not ordinary light, but something else. Something that was to light what light is to darkness. I saw myself stepping through, my form dissolving and reforming, becoming something new, something more. I saw the underwater cities in their full glory, teeming with life and consciousness, connected by bonds of thought and feeling that spanned the entire ocean. I saw the covenant renewed, strengthened, extended to encompass not just the keepers and the creatures, but all of humanity, all of life, all of existence. And I saw the choice that awaited me on the other side. I could return to the world as I knew it, carrying my new understanding but living as I had lived before. I could tend the light, keep the covenant, serve as a bridge between realms while remaining fundamentally human. This was the easier path, the safer path, the path that most who passed through the door eventually chose. Or I could stay in the expanded state, merging fully with the consciousness of the deep, becoming a permanent part of the vast network of minds that had watched over the world since its beginning. I would lose my individual identity, my separate self, my human life, but I would gain something far greater, a participation in the infinite, an eternal existence as part of something unimaginably beautiful and wise. The vision faded, and I found myself gripping the gallery railing, my knuckles white, my heart pounding. Leviathan watched me for a moment longer, then sank beneath the waves, leaving me alone with the weight of what I had seen. The choice. It all comes down to the choice. I do not know which path I will take. I do not know if I am capable of surrendering myself, my identity, my individual existence. But I know that I must face the decision soon. The door is almost ready to open, and when it does, I will have to choose. November 15th, 1892. I have spent the past 5 days in contemplation, barely eating, barely sleeping, wrestling with the choice that awaits me. I have walked the rocks around the lighthouse, letting the wind and spray clear my mind. I have sat in the cave, surrounded by the glowing stones, feeling the presence behind the door pulse with patient anticipation. I have communed with Leviathan, seeking guidance, seeking wisdom, seeking some sign that would make the decision clear. And slowly, gradually, I have come to understand something. The choice is not really a choice at all, or rather, it is a choice I have already made long ago without realizing it. When I left Edinburgh and came to Morrow Point, I was choosing to leave behind the life I knew. When I embraced the solitude, the mystery, the wonder of this place, I was choosing to become something new. When I learned the language of the deep, when I communed with the creatures, when I accepted my role as keeper of the covenant, I was choosing to expand beyond the boundaries of ordinary human existence. The door is not asking me to make a new choice. It is asking me to acknowledge the choice I have already made, to commit fully to the path I have been walking all along, to stop holding back, stop hedging my bets, stop keeping one foot in the world I left behind. I think of my mother dying peacefully in her bed, passing through her own door into whatever lies beyond. I think of Catherine, waiting faithfully for a love that transcended death. I think of Thomas Brennan, broken by his inability to trust. And I think of myself, Edward Ashworth, keeper of Morrow Point Light, student of the symbols, friend of Leviathan. I know what I must do. November 20th, 1892. Tonight is the night. I have prepared everything. The light is burning bright, its beams sweeping across the dark water with steady, reassuring rhythm. The mechanisms are wound, the oil reservoirs full, the lens polished to perfection. If something happens to me, if I do not return from what I am about to do, the light will continue burning for at least 3 days, long enough for someone to notice my absence and send help. I have written letters to Margaret, to Captain Gregor, to the Lighthouse board. I have explained as much as I can explain, which is not much. I have asked them not to worry, not to search for me, not to assume the worst. I have told them that I am going somewhere I have always been meant to go, doing something I have always been meant to do. They will not understand. But perhaps, someday, someone will find this journal and read these words and understand. Perhaps another keeper will come to Morrow Point and discover the cave and the door and the covenant. Perhaps they will follow the path I have walked and make the choice I am about to make. And perhaps, in some way I cannot foresee, my words will help them. The moon is rising, full and bright, casting silver light across the water. Leviathan has surfaced, waiting, watching. The time has come. I am taking the glowing stone, the one Leviathan gave me. I am taking the paper with its mysterious symbols. I am taking nothing else, no lantern, no rope, no provisions. Where I am going, such things will not be needed. I am not afraid. I thought I would be afraid, but I am not. I am calm, peaceful, filled with a quiet joy that defies description. I am about to step through a door that has been waiting for me since before I was born, since before humanity existed, since the first light flickered in the primordial darkness. I am ready. November 20th, 1892. Continued. I am writing this by the light of the glowing stones, sitting in the deepest chamber of the cave facing the door. The symbols around it are blazing with blue fire, pulsing in rhythm with my heart, with the stone in my hand, with the vast presence that waits beyond. The door is open. I can see through it now, not clearly, not completely, but enough. I see light, endless light, light that is also love, also wisdom, also life. I see forms moving in that light, beings of pure consciousness, ancient and beautiful beyond description. I see the network that connects them, the web of thought and feeling that spans the ocean and reaches up to touch the land, the sky, the stars themselves. And I see a place for me in that network, a node, a nexus, a point of connection. Not the loss of self I feared, but the expansion of self. Not the end of Edward Ashworth, but his fulfillment. I am standing now. I am walking toward the door. The light is growing brighter, warmer, more welcoming with each step. I am at the threshold. I am stepping through. I am... The entry ends here. The remaining pages of the journal are blank. December 1st, 1892. I am writing again. I do not know how to describe what happened. I do not know if human language is capable of capturing the experience. But I will try, because the record must be kept, because future keepers must know what awaits them if they walk this path. I stepped through the door, and I was everywhere at once. I was in the ocean, in the sky, in the earth beneath the lighthouse. I was in the minds of the creatures, feeling their ancient thoughts, sharing their vast memories. I was in the past, witnessing the birth of the covenant, the building of the first beacon, the long chain of keepers stretching back through millennia. I was in the future, seeing possibilities branch and diverge, worlds that might be and worlds that might not. And I was in the presence of something I can only call God, though that word is too small, too limited, too human. It was the source of everything, the light behind all lights, the love behind all loves, the consciousness that dreams the universe into being. It welcomed me. It knew me. It had always known me, had been waiting for me since before time began. I do not know how long I was in that state. It might have been seconds. It might have been centuries. Time had no meaning there, no purchase, no power. And then I was given the choice. I could stay. I could merge fully with the infinite, become a permanent part of the cosmic consciousness, lose my individual self in the vastness of the whole. It would have been beautiful. It would have been peaceful. It would have been the end of all suffering, all loneliness, all fear. But I chose to return. I chose to return because the work is not finished. I chose to return because the covenant needs keepers, and I am a keeper. I chose to return because there are others who will walk this path after me, and they will need guidance, and I can provide it. I chose to return because I love this world, this small, fragile, beautiful world of rocks and waves and lighthouse beams. I love the feel of wind on my face and salt on my lips. I love the rhythm of the tides and the wheeling of the stars. I love the humans who struggle and suffer and hope and dream, who build beacons against the darkness and keep faith with each other across the vast distances of time and space. I am changed. I will never be entirely human again, but I am still Edward Ashworth. I am still the keeper of Morrow Point Light, and I will continue to serve, to watch, to wait, until my time here is done and another takes my place. The door is closed now, but it is not locked. It will open again for me or for another, when the time is right, and what lies beyond will be waiting, patient and eternal, ready to welcome whoever has the courage and the faith to step through. This is the covenant, this is the mystery. This is the light that never goes out. December 5th, 1892. The world looks different now. Not in the obvious ways. The rocks are still rocks, the sea is still the sea, the lighthouse still stands tall against the sky, but there is a luminosity to everything, a depth that I never perceived before. I see the connections between things, the invisible threads that link every atom to every other atom, every mind to every other mind. I see the patterns that underlie reality, the mathematics of existence, the music of the spheres, and I see the creatures differently too. Before, Leviathan and the others were mysterious, alien, other. Now I understand them as kin. We are made of the same stuff, animated by the same consciousness, participating in the same cosmic dance. The boundaries between us are real but permeable, like the membrane of a cell, defining our individual existence while allowing for exchange, communication, communion. I have resumed my duties with a new sense of purpose. Every task, no matter how mundane, feels sacred now. When I polish the lens, I am polishing a window between worlds. When I wind the clockwork, I am maintaining the heartbeat of the covenant. When I light the lamp at dusk, I am kindling a flame that burns in multiple dimensions, visible to eyes both human and otherwise. Captain Gregor came yesterday with supplies. He looked at me strangely, as if sensing that something had changed, but unable to identify what. "You look well, Mr. Ashworth," he said. "Better than well. You look, I don't know, younger somehow, more alive." I smiled and thanked him for the observation. I did not try to explain. How could I? The experience I have had is beyond words, beyond ordinary comprehension. It can only be lived, not described. But I noticed something as he was leaving. He paused at the edge of the rocks, looking out at the water, and I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Curiosity, longing, a hint of the same hunger that brought me to Morrow Point in the first place. Perhaps, in time, Captain Gregor will find his own door. Perhaps everyone does, eventually. December 10th, 1892. Winter has settled over Morrow Point with a vengeance. The days are short and gray, the nights long and cold. Ice forms on the gallery railing, and I must be careful when I climb the stairs lest I slip on the frozen condensation. The sea is a churning mass of steel and white, waves crashing against the rocks with a fury that seems personal, intentional. I love it. I love the harshness, the challenge, the reminder that nature is not gentle or forgiving. The lighthouse stands against the storm, and I stand with it, keeping the light burning, maintaining the beacon that guides ships through the darkness. This is what I was made for. This is where I belong. The creatures have been more active lately. I see them often now, not just Leviathan, but others. Smaller beings that dart through the waves, larger ones that surface briefly before diving back into the depths. They seem to be gathering, congregating around Morrow Point in numbers I have not seen before. I do not know what this means, but I sense that something is building, some event or transition that requires their presence. I have been spending more time in the cave studying the symbols, deepening my understanding of the language I learned to read. There are layers I did not perceive before, subtleties that only became visible after I passed through the door. The carvings are not just records or messages. They are living things, repositories of consciousness that respond to attention, that teach and guide and nurture those who approach them with the right attitude. I am learning things that no human has known for thousands of years. I am recovering wisdom that was lost when the old ways were forgotten, when the covenant faded from memory, when humanity turned its back on the deep and focused only on the surface of things. And I am recording what I learn, filling page after page of my journal with notes and sketches and reflections, creating a guide for those who will come after me. This is my new purpose, not just to keep the light, but to keep the knowledge, to preserve the covenant not just in practice, but in understanding, to ensure that the door remains accessible to those who are ready to pass through it. December 15th, 1892. A remarkable thing happened today. I was in the cave, sitting in the chamber with the door, meditating on the symbols that surround it. My mind was quiet, open, receptive, the state I have learned to cultivate through months of practice. And then, without warning, I was no longer alone. The Sea Mother appeared just as she had before, materializing from the shadows, her form wavering between solid and translucent, her eyes holding depths that no human eyes could hold. But this time she was not alone. Behind her, barely visible in the dim light, were other figures, dozens of them, perhaps hundreds, stretching back into the darkness of the passage. "Edward Ashworth," she said, and her voice resonated through the chamber, through my bones, through the very fabric of reality. "Keeper of the light, walker between worlds, you have passed through the door and returned. You have made the choice that few have the courage to make. And now you must learn what that choice means." She gestured, and the figures behind her moved forward, resolving into clearer focus. I saw men and women of every age and era, some dressed in ancient robes, others in medieval garb, still others in clothing I recognized from more recent centuries. Their faces were serene, their eyes bright with the same luminosity I had seen in my own reflection since passing through the door. "These are the keepers who came before you," the Sea Mother said. "Those who walked the path you have walked, who made the choice you have made. They are part of the covenant now, part of the network that sustains the balance between worlds. And you are one of them." I looked at the faces before me, and I felt a surge of recognition, of kinship, of belonging. These were my brothers and sisters, my ancestors in spirit, if not in blood. They had stood where I stood, had faced what I faced, had chosen what I chose, and they had continued, in some form, beyond the boundaries of ordinary life. "What must I learn?" I asked. The Sea Mother smiled. "Everything," she said, "and nothing. You already know what you need to know. You simply have not yet realized that you know it. Our task is to help you remember, to help you access the wisdom that is already within you, waiting to be awakened." She reached out and touched my forehead, and I felt a flood of images, memories, knowledge pouring into my mind. I saw the history of the covenant from the inside, experienced through the consciousness of those who had lived it. I felt the joys and sorrows of 1,000 keepers, the triumphs and failures, the moments of doubt and the moments of transcendence. I understood, in a way that went beyond mere intellectual comprehension, what it meant to be a bridge between worlds. When the vision faded, I was alone again. The Sea Mother and the keepers had vanished, leaving only the glowing stones and the silent door. But I was not the same. I would never be the same again. December 20th, 1892. The winter solstice approaches, and with it comes a deepening of the darkness that I find strangely comforting. The long nights give me time to think, to process, to integrate the experiences of the past weeks. I sit by the stove in my quarters, watching the flames dance, feeling the warmth seep into my bones, and I let my mind wander through the vast landscapes of memory and understanding that have opened up within me. I think about the keepers I saw in the cave, the long line of souls who have served the covenant across the centuries. I wonder about their lives, their stories, their individual journeys to the door and beyond. Each one was unique, I know, shaped by their own time and circumstances, facing their own challenges and temptations. Yet each one made the same essential choice: to serve, to bridge, to keep the light burning against the darkness. I am part of that lineage now. My name will be added to the roll of keepers, my story woven into the tapestry of the covenant. Future generations will know of Edward Ashworth, the man who came to Morrow Point seeking solitude and found something far greater. They will read my words, study my experiences, perhaps even commune with my consciousness in the way I have communed with those who came before. This thought brings me comfort. I am not alone, have never been alone, will never be alone. The isolation I once feared is an illusion, a trick of limited perception. In truth, I am connected to everything, to the creatures of the deep, to the keepers of the past, to the vast network of consciousness that spans the universe. I am a node in an infinite web, a note in an eternal symphony, a spark in a fire that has burned since the beginning of time and will burn until its end. December 25th, 1892. Christmas Day. My second Christmas at Morrow Point, and how different it feels from the first. Last year I was still new to this place, still adjusting to the solitude, still uncertain of my purpose. I celebrated the holiday with a simple meal and a glass of whiskey, feeling the weight of isolation, missing the warmth of family and friends. The day passed slowly, marked only by the rhythm of my duties and the endless conversation of the sea. This year, I am not alone. Oh, I am physically alone. There is no one else in the lighthouse, no visitors expected, no celebrations planned. But I feel the presence of the creatures in the water below, the keepers in the realm beyond, the vast consciousness that embraces us all. I feel connected to every soul who is celebrating this day, every family gathered around a fire, every child opening presents, every lonely heart seeking comfort in the darkness. I have prepared a special meal, not elaborate but meaningful. Fish I caught myself, bread I baked in the Lighthouse oven, a bottle of wine that Captain Gregor brought on his last visit. I set the table with care, lighting candles, arranging everything just so. And then I sat down to eat, not alone but in communion with all those who share this moment across the world. As I ate, I thought about the meaning of this holiday, the celebration of light in the darkest time of year, the promise of renewal and rebirth, the hope that sustains us through the long nights of winter. These themes resonate deeply with my experience at Morrow Point. The lighthouse is a symbol of that hope, a beacon that says to all who see it, "You are not lost, you are not forgotten. There is a way through the darkness." After my meal, I climbed to the gallery and watched the light sweep across the water. The night was clear and cold, the stars blazing overhead with a brilliance that took my breath away. I stood there for a long time, feeling the wind on my face, feeling the presence of the creatures below, feeling the weight and wonder of existence pressing in on me from all sides. "Merry Christmas," I whispered to the darkness. "Merry Christmas to all who watch and wait. Merry Christmas to all who keep the light burning." And somewhere in the depths below, I felt an answer. A pulse of warmth, a surge of love, a wordless blessing that wrapped around me like a blanket and held me close. December 31st, 1892. The last day of the year. Tomorrow begins 1893, and with it a new chapter in my life at Morrow Point. I have been reflecting on all that has happened since I arrived here 14 months ago. The journey from that nervous, uncertain man to the being I am now seems almost impossible, a transformation so complete that I can barely recognize my former self. I have learned things that most humans never learn, seen things that most humans never see, experienced realities that most humans never imagine. I have passed through a door that leads to the infinite and returned to tell the tale. And yet, in many ways, I am still the same. I still love the simple pleasures of life, a good meal, a warm fire, a beautiful sunset. I still feel the full range of human emotions, joy and sorrow, hope and fear, love and loneliness. I still struggle with doubt, with uncertainty, with the limitations of my understanding. The transformation has not made me perfect or complete. It has simply opened my eyes to possibilities I never knew existed. As midnight approaches, I climb to the gallery one last time. The light is burning bright, its beams sweeping across the dark water with steady, reassuring rhythm. The stars wheel overhead, indifferent to human calendars, marking time in their own ancient way. The sea murmurs below, its voice a constant companion, a reminder of the depths that lie beneath the surface of things. I think about the year ahead. I do not know what it will bring, what challenges, what revelations, what joys and sorrows await me. But I know that I will face whatever comes with the strength and wisdom I have gained. I know that I am not alone, that I am supported by forces greater than myself, that I am part of something that transcends individual existence. The clock in my quarters strikes midnight, its chimes barely audible above the wind. I raise my face to the stars and whisper a prayer, not to any god I was taught to worship, but to the vast consciousness that I have come to know, the presence that dwells behind the door and within all things. Thank you, I say. Thank you for this year, for this place, for this life. Thank you for the covenant, for the creatures, for the light. Thank you for the chance to serve, to learn, to grow. And thank you for whatever comes next. The wind carries my words away, scattering them across the water, and I feel an answer rise from the depths. A pulse of acknowledgement, a surge of love, a promise that the journey is only beginning. Happy New Year, I think. Happy New Year to all who watch and wait. And then I descend the stairs, tend to the light one last time and go to bed, ready to dream of underwater cities and ancient wisdom, and a door that stands forever open to those who have the courage to pass through. January 5th, 1893. The new year has brought fierce weather to Morrow Point. For the past 4 days, a storm has raged without ceasing, battering the lighthouse with wind and rain and waves that crash against the rocks with thunderous force. I have barely slept, spending most of my time in the lantern room, ensuring that the light continues to burn, that the mechanism continues to turn, that the beacon remains visible to any ships that might be struggling through the tempest. This is the hardest part of the keeper's life, the long hours of vigilance, the constant battle against the elements. The knowledge that lives depend on your diligence. But it is also the most meaningful part. When I stand in the lantern room, surrounded by the roar of the storm, watching the beam cut through the darkness, I feel the full weight of my purpose. I am the light in the darkness. I am the hope in the storm. I am the promise that someone is watching, someone is caring, someone is keeping faith with those who sail the treacherous waters. The creatures have been active throughout the storm. I see them in the brief moments when the rain lets up, dark shapes moving through the churning water, seemingly untroubled by the violence of the waves. Leviathan surfaced once, its massive form rising from the depths like a mountain emerging from the sea. It looked at me through the rain-streaked window of the lantern room, and I felt a pulse of reassurance, a wordless message that all was well, that the storm would pass, that the covenant held. I am tired. My body aches from the long hours of standing, the constant climbing of stairs, the tension of vigilance. But my spirit is strong. I have faced storms before, and I will face them again. This is what I was made for. This is where I belong. January 10th, 1893. The storm has finally passed, leaving behind a world transformed. The rocks around the lighthouse are strewn with debris, driftwood and seaweed, and the broken remains of things I cannot identify. The air is clean and sharp, washed by days of rain, carrying the scent of salt and renewal. The sea, so violent just hours ago, has settled into a gentle swell, its surface glittering in the pale winter sunlight. I spent the morning surveying the damage and making repairs. The lighthouse itself is unharmed. These old stones have weathered far worse than this, but some of the outbuildings have suffered. The storage shed has lost part of its roof, and the supply crane needs adjustment. I will have to request materials from the mainland when Captain Gregor next visits. In the afternoon, I descended to the cave to check on the chambers below. I was worried that the storm might have caused flooding or collapse, but my fears were unfounded. The cave is as dry and still as ever, protected by some quality of the rock, or perhaps by something more than rock. The glowing stones pulse with their steady rhythm. The symbols shine on the walls. The door waits in patient silence. I sat for a while in the deepest chamber, letting the peace of the place seep into my storm-weary bones. The contrast with the violence above was striking. Here, all was calm, all was quiet, all was eternal. The storm that had raged for days was nothing to this place, a momentary disturbance on the surface of something infinitely deep and infinitely patient. I thought about the ships that might have been caught in the storm, the sailors who might have seen the light and steered to safety. I will never know how many lives the beacon has saved, how many disasters it has prevented. That is the nature of this work. The successes are invisible, known only to those who benefit from them. But I take comfort in the knowledge that the light was burning, that the covenant was kept, that I did my part. January 15th, 1893. A letter arrived today from Margaret. She writes that she is well, that she has begun to recover from our mother's death, that she is thinking of traveling to the continent in the spring. She asks about my health, my work, my state of mind. She does not ask about the things I cannot tell her, the covenant, the creatures, the door. She has accepted, I think, that there are parts of my life she will never understand. I wrote back with news of the storm, descriptions of the winter landscape, assurances that I am well and content. I told her about the repairs I am making, the books I am reading, the small pleasures that fill my days. I did not tell her about the transformation I have undergone, the visions I have seen, the choice I have made. These are not things that can be shared in a letter, not truths that can be transmitted through ink and paper. But I did tell her one thing that surprised me as I wrote it. I told her that I love her, that I am grateful for her patience and understanding, that I hope we will see each other again someday. These words came easily, naturally, as if they had been waiting to be spoken for a long time. The experience of passing through the door has not made me less human. If anything, it has made me more so. I feel my connections to others more deeply now, appreciate them more fully, cherish them more consciously. Margaret is my sister. She is part of my story, part of who I am. The distance between us, physical and otherwise, does not diminish that bond. It simply gives it a different shape, a different expression. I carry her with me always, just as I carry our mother, just as I carry everyone I have ever loved. January 20th, 1893. The creatures have been teaching me. It started a few days ago when Leviathan surfaced at sunset and fixed me with that ancient, knowing gaze. I felt the familiar pulse of communication, the flow of images and feelings that constitutes the language of the deep. But this time, there was something different. a structure, a progression, a sense of deliberate instruction. Leviathan showed me how to extend my awareness beyond my physical body, how to project my consciousness into the water, into the air, into the rock beneath my feet. It is a skill that the creatures possess naturally, a way of being that is as fundamental to them as breathing is to me. But for a human, it requires practice, discipline, a willingness to let go of the boundaries that define ordinary perception. I have been practicing every day, sitting on the rocks at the water's edge, letting my mind expand outward in ever-widening circles. At first, I could barely extend beyond my own skin. The habit of containment is strong, ingrained by a lifetime of believing that I end where my body ends. But gradually, with Leviathan's patient guidance, I have learned to push past those limits. Now I can feel the fish swimming in the shallows, their small, bright minds flickering like candles in the dark. I can sense the seabirds wheeling overhead, their simple thoughts focused on food and flight and the endless search for safety. I can touch the edges of Leviathan's vast consciousness, feeling the weight of millennia, the depth of wisdom, the patient love that the great creature holds for all living things. This is what it means to be a bridge between worlds, not just to know about the connection, but to experience it directly, to feel it in every fiber of my being. I am learning to live in two realms at once, to be both human and something more, to walk the boundary between the ordinary and the extraordinary. January 25th, 1893. Captain Gregor came today with supplies and news. He brought the materials I requested for repairs, along with letters, newspapers, and a package from Margaret containing warm socks and a new scarf. He also brought something unexpected, a young woman named Eleanor Marsh, who has been sent by the Lighthouse board to conduct an inspection. Miss Marsh is perhaps 30 years old, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense manner that reminds me of the academics I knew in Edinburgh. She carries a leather satchel full of forms and checklists, and she approaches her work with a thoroughness that is both admirable and slightly intimidating. She will be staying at Morrow Point for 3 days, examining every aspect of the lighthouse's operation, ensuring that everything meets the board's standards. I showed her around the facility, explaining the mechanisms, demonstrating the routines, answering her questions with as much detail as I could provide. She took copious notes, her pen scratching across the paper with efficient speed. She seemed satisfied with what she saw. The lighthouse is in good order, the light is well maintained, the records are complete and accurate. But I noticed something as we toured the facility. Miss Marsh paused several times, her head tilted as if listening to something I could not hear. She lingered at certain spots, the base of the tower, the entrance to the storage shed, the rocks near the water's edge, with an expression I could not quite read. And when we passed the hidden entrance to the cave, she stopped entirely, her eyes fixed on the seemingly ordinary stretch of cliff face. "Is there something behind there?" she asked. I hesitated. How much should I tell her? How much could she understand? "Just rock," I said. "The cliff is solid all the way through." She looked at me for a long moment, and I had the uncomfortable feeling that she could see right through my lie. But she said nothing, simply nodded and moved on to the next item on her checklist. "I will have to be careful around Miss Marsh. There is more to her than meets the eye." January 26, 1893. My suspicions about Miss Marsh were confirmed today. I was in the lantern room performing my evening duties when I heard footsteps on the stairs below. This was unusual. Miss Marsh had retired to the guest quarters hours ago, claiming fatigue from her journey. I descended to investigate and found her standing at the base of the tower, her hand pressed against the wall, her eyes closed in concentration. "Miss Marsh?" I said. She opened her eyes and looked at me without surprise, as if she had known I was there all along. "Mr. Ashworth," she said, "I apologize for the intrusion. I could not sleep. Is something wrong?" She was silent for a moment, seeming to weigh her words carefully. Then she said, "I feel it, Mr. Ashworth. The presence, the otherness. I have felt it since I arrived, growing stronger with each passing hour. I thought at first it was my imagination, but now I am certain. There is something here, something extraordinary." I studied her face, looking for signs of fear or confusion. I saw neither. What I saw was curiosity, excitement, a hunger for understanding that I recognized all too well. "How do you know about such things?" I asked. She smiled, and in that smile I saw a kinship I had not expected. "My grandmother was a keeper," she said, "not of a lighthouse, but of a sacred grove in Cornwall. She taught me to sense the boundaries between worlds, to feel the presence of the old powers. I thought it was just stories, just superstition. But then I started working for the Lighthouse Board, and I began to notice things, patterns, anomalies. Lighthouses where the keepers reported strange experiences, where the records contained gaps and inconsistencies, where something more than ordinary seemed to be at work. And Morrow Point. Morrow Point is the most powerful site I have ever encountered. The presence here is immense, ancient. I do not fully understand what it is, but I know it is real, and I know that you understand it far better than I do. I considered my options. I could continue to deny, to deflect, to protect the secrets of this place. Or I could trust this woman, share what I knew, perhaps find an ally in the work of keeping the covenant. I chose trust. "Come with me," I said. "There is something I want to show you." January 27th, 1893. I took Miss Marsh to the cave. I showed her the passages, the chambers, the symbols on the walls. I showed her the glowing stones, the carvings that depict the history of the covenant, the door that leads to realms beyond ordinary comprehension. I told her everything, my journey, my transformation, my choice to return and continue serving as keeper. She listened without interrupting, her sharp eyes taking in every detail, her quick mind processing information that would have overwhelmed most people. When I finished, she was silent for a long time, standing before the door, her hand hovering just above its surface. "May I?" she asked. I nodded. She pressed her palm against the stone, and I saw her body stiffen, her eyes widen, her breath catch in her throat. She was feeling what I had felt, the presence behind the door, the vast consciousness that waits for those who are ready to pass through. After a moment, she pulled her hand away, her face pale but her eyes shining. "It's real," she whispered. "It's all real." "Yes," I said. "It is." She turned to me, and I saw tears on her cheeks, tears of wonder, of relief, of joy. "I have been searching for this my whole life," she said. "I knew there was more to the world than what we see, more than what science and reason can explain. My grandmother told me, but I never truly believed until now." "What will you do with this knowledge?" I asked. She wiped her eyes and straightened her shoulders, composing herself with visible effort. "I will protect it," she said. "I will ensure that Morrow Point remains in the hands of keepers who understand its true purpose. I will use my position at the board to shield this place from those who would exploit or destroy what they do not comprehend." "You would do that?" "I would consider it an honor." I looked at this woman, this unexpected ally, this kindred spirit, and I felt a surge of gratitude that brought tears to my own eyes. I had thought I was alone in my understanding, isolated by the very knowledge that had transformed me. But here was another who saw, who felt, who knew. Here was proof that the covenant was not mine alone to keep. "Thank you, Miss Marsh," I said. "Eleanor," she corrected. "Please call me Eleanor." "Thank you, Eleanor," she smiled. And in that smile I saw the beginning of a friendship that would span years, perhaps decades, perhaps longer. The covenant had brought us together, and the covenant would sustain us. January 28, 1893. Eleanor left this morning, carried back to the mainland by Captain Gregor. Her inspection report, she assured me, would be glowing. Morrow Point is a model lighthouse, its keeper exemplary, its operations beyond reproach. But more importantly, she promised to return when she could, to continue learning, to deepen her understanding of the mysteries she had glimpsed. I watched the boat until it disappeared over the horizon, feeling a mixture of sadness and hope. Sadness at the departure of a kindred spirit, hope at the knowledge that I am not alone. The Covenant is larger than I knew, its keepers more numerous than I imagined. Eleanor is one of them, even if she has not yet passed through the door. And there are others, I am certain, scattered across the world, tending their own sacred sites, keeping their own lights burning against the darkness. We are a network, a web, a family bound not by blood but by purpose. We watch over the boundaries between worlds, maintain the balance that keeps reality stable, serve the ancient powers that most humans have forgotten or never knew existed. The lighthouse is not merely a beacon for ships, it is a beacon for something far older, far deeper, far more essential to the fabric of existence itself. I understand now why Thomas Brennan wrote "Forgive Me" into the brass. He must have glimpsed this truth and found it too heavy to bear. Some keepers break under the weight of knowing. Others, like myself, find a strange liberation in it. To know one's purpose, to understand one's place in the grand design, this is not a burden but a gift. The creatures, Leviathan and his kin, are not monsters. They are guardians, just as we are. They patrol the depths as we patrol the heights. The light calls to them, comforts them, reminds them that the Covenant holds. And they in turn watch over us, protect us from things that lurk in the spaces between. I have seen those things now, in visions shared by Leviathan. Shadows that move against the current, shapes that have no form until they choose one, hungers that have no name. The light keeps them at bay. The light has always kept them at bay, since the first keeper lit the first flame on this rock 1,000 years before any official record began. June 3rd, 1892. The summer solstice approaches, and I feel a strange anticipation building in my chest. Leviathan has been visiting more frequently, sometimes twice in a single night. The other creatures, I have counted at least 7 distinct individuals now, circle the lighthouse in patterns that seem almost ceremonial. Something is coming, something important. I have been studying the cave carvings with renewed intensity. There is a sequence I had not noticed before, hidden in a corner where the rock curves away from the main chamber. It depicts the solstice, the sun at its highest point, and beneath it, a gathering of the creatures around a lighthouse. The keeper stands at the gallery, arms raised, and from his hands streams light that mingles with the light from the lens above. I do not know what this means. I do not know what will be expected of me, but I am not afraid. Fear left me somewhere in the long winter nights, replaced by something quieter and more enduring. Trust, perhaps, faith in the covenant that binds us all. The supply boat came yesterday, and Captain Gregor remarked that I looked well. Better than any keeper I've seen after a winter alone, he said, studying me with those sharp eyes of his. Most men come out of it hollow. You look filled up. I could not explain to him what has filled me. I simply smiled and helped him unload the supplies. Fresh vegetables, flour, salt, oil for the lamp, and letters. 3 from Margaret, 1 from an old colleague at the university, and 1 with no return address, written in a hand I did not recognize. I saved the mysterious letter for last, opening it alone in my quarters after the supply boat had departed. The paper was old, yellowed at the edges, and the ink had faded to a pale brown. But the words were clear enough. To the keeper of Morrow Point. If you are reading this, you have survived your first winter. More importantly, you have been chosen. The creatures do not reveal themselves to everyone. Most keepers serve their entire tenure seeing nothing but waves and weather. You are different. You have been marked. Do not be alarmed. This is an honor, though it may not feel like one. You are now part of something ancient, something essential. The summer solstice will be your initiation. When the time comes, you will know what to do. Trust the light, trust the deep, trust yourself. We are watching, we are proud. A fellow keeper. I read the letter 3 times, searching for clues about its author. The handwriting was elegant, educated, clearly from someone of learning, but there was no date, no indication of when it had been written or how it had found its way into my supply delivery. Captain Gregor had handed it to me with the others, unremarkable among the stack. How long had this letter been waiting for me? Who had written it? How did they know what I had experienced? The questions multiplied, but beneath them I felt a curious calm. I was not alone. I had never been alone. Somewhere out there, other keepers had walked this same path, had seen what I had seen, had been transformed as I had been transformed. We were connected across time and space, bound by the light and the deep. I placed the letter with Thomas Brennan's unsent correspondence, adding it to the archive of Lighthouse secrets. Someday, perhaps, I would write my own letter to a future keeper. Someday, I would be the voice of reassurance reaching across the years. But first, the solstice. First, whatever awaited me on that longest day. June 10th, 1892. I have begun preparing, though I am not entirely certain what I am preparing for. Each night I climb to the gallery and stand beneath the stars, letting the light wash over me, feeling its warmth seep into my bones. I speak to Leviathan when he surfaces, telling him of my hopes and fears, asking questions I know he cannot answer in words, but he answers in other ways. Images flood my mind. The solstice sun blazing overhead, the creatures gathered in a great circle, the lighthouse pulsing with light that seems to come from within the stone itself rather than from the lens above. I see myself standing at the center of it all, arms raised, voice lifted in words I do not yet know. It should terrify me. Instead, it fills me with a fierce, quiet joy. I have been eating well, sleeping deeply, tending to my duties with meticulous care. The lighthouse has never been cleaner, the lens never more perfectly polished, the clockwork mechanism never more precisely calibrated. I want everything to be perfect. I want to be worthy of whatever honor is being bestowed upon me. Margaret's letters sit unanswered on my desk. I do not know what to tell her. How can I explain that her brother has become something other than what he was? How can I describe the transformation without sounding mad? She worries about me, I know. She thinks the isolation has damaged my mind. If only she could understand that it has healed me, completed me, made me whole in ways I never knew I was broken. Perhaps after the solstice, I will find the words. Perhaps the initiation will grant me clarity, wisdom, the ability to bridge the gap between my world and hers. Or perhaps I will simply continue to write gentle lies, protecting her from truths she is not ready to hear. The wind has shifted to the south, bringing warmer air and the scent of distant flowers. Summer is truly here now, and with it, the longest days of the year. I count them down like a child counting days until Christmas. Each sunrise bringing me closer to something I cannot name but desperately want. 11 days until the solstice. 11 days until I discover what I am meant to become. June 15th, 1892. Something remarkable happened tonight. I was standing at the gallery, as has become my custom, watching the creatures circle below. The moon was nearly full, casting silver light across the waves, and I could see their dark shapes moving through the luminous water. There were more of them than I had ever seen, dozens, perhaps scores, converging on Morrow Point from all directions. Leviathan surfaced directly below me, closer than he had ever come before. His eye, that vast, ancient, knowing eye, fixed upon me, and I felt the familiar pressure of his consciousness touching mine. But this time, instead of images, I received something else. Words, not spoken aloud, not heard with my ears, but understood nonetheless. Words that formed in my mind as clearly as if I had thought them myself, yet unmistakably coming from somewhere, someone else. You are ready. 3 words. Simple, direct, absolute. I gripped the gallery railing, my knees suddenly weak. Ready for what? I whispered into the wind. To see, to know, to serve. I already serve, I said. I keep the light burning. I maintain the beacon. You keep the small light. Soon you will keep the greater light, the light within. I did not understand, but I nodded anyway. Understanding would come. It always did, with Leviathan. Patience was the first lesson he had taught me, and I had learned it well. The solstice brings the thinning. The boundaries weaken. The hungry ones press close. You must hold the line. How? My voice was barely a whisper now. How do I hold the line? With light, with will, with the fire that burns in every keeper's heart. You have it. We have seen it. Bright and steady, like the beacon above. The creatures below began to sing. That haunting, mournful, beautiful sound that I had first heard months ago. But now I heard it differently. Now I heard the words within the wordless melody, the meaning beneath the music. They were singing of light and darkness, of boundaries and breaches, of keepers who had stood firm and keepers who had fallen. They were singing of me. Remember, Leviathan's voice echoed in my mind. You are not alone. You have never been alone. We are with you. We have always been with you. The covenant holds. Then he sank beneath the waves, and the other creatures followed, their song fading into the rhythm of the sea. I stood at the gallery for a long time afterward, trembling not with fear, but with something closer to awe. 6 days until the solstice. 6 days until I discover what it means to keep the greater light. June 18th, 1892. I have not slept in 2 days, but I do not feel tired. Energy courses through me, strange and electric, as if the approaching solstice is charging me like a battery. I pace the lighthouse from top to bottom, checking and rechecking every system, every mechanism, every inch of glass and brass and stone. The creatures have not returned since Leviathan spoke to me. The sea around Morrow Point is empty, unnaturally calm, as if holding its breath. Even the birds have gone quiet. The world waits. I have been reading Thomas Brennan's letters again, searching for any mention of the solstice, any hint that he experienced what I am experiencing. But his letters end in March, months before the summer's longest day. Whatever happened to him, whatever drove him to scratch "forgive me" into the brass and flee this place, it was not this. Or perhaps it was. Perhaps he was chosen, as I have been chosen, and he could not bear the weight of it. Perhaps he ran from the honor that I am running toward. I will not run. I will not fail. Whatever is asked of me, I will give. Whatever price must be paid, I will pay. The covenant holds, and I am part of it now, woven into the fabric of something vast and ancient and essential. 3 days. June 20th, 1892. Tomorrow. I have spent the day in meditation, sitting cross-legged on the gallery floor, letting the sun warm my face and the wind tangle my hair. I have eaten nothing but bread and water, not from any instruction, but from instinct. My body knows what it needs. My body is preparing itself. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, I saw them returning. The creatures, dozens of them, rising from the depths and taking their positions around the lighthouse. They formed a perfect circle, their dark bodies breaking the surface at regular intervals, their eyes, so many eyes, fixed upon the beacon above. Leviathan took his place directly before the lighthouse, larger than all the others, ancient beyond measure. He did not speak to me tonight. He did not need to. Everything that needed to be said had been said. Now there was only the waiting, the final hours before dawn. I will not sleep tonight. I will keep vigil, as keepers have kept vigil since the first flame was lit on this rock. I will watch the stars wheel overhead, Watch the moon trace its silver path across the sky. Watch the eastern horizon for the first pale hint of the solstice sun. And when it rises, when the longest day begins, I will be ready. The light burns steady above me. The creatures sing softly below. The covenant holds. Tomorrow I become what I was always meant to be.